Yes, thank you. That's my slide,
Okay.
my
Okay, you
present.
can begin. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Robert Fungo. I am the current president of the Federation of African Institution Societies. I also work at Uganda at a university known as Makerere University. I, yeah, as Francis mentioned, the same applies to Uganda. We have just got the dietary guidelines, Uganda, and they were approved recently. And I just want to go through the process of when they were developing them and what they recommend for for the feeding. And my slides, I'll be talking about I'll briefly talk about the background, the rationale for the guidelines, and the objectives of those guidelines of Uganda. Then I'll talk take you through the briefly about the process, what happened when they were developing them recently, and then the key recommendations for health diet, and lastly is to be thank you. Next slide. Yeah, Uganda, just like most African countries, they because of the urban population growing, they are facing challenges of healthy diets, uh, and these diets play a critical role for optimal health. Currently, about 10% of the population of Uganda is in urban centers, and the obesity has been rising for the last 10 years. Currently, about 23% of both men and female are overweight, and about 10% are obese in Uganda. And because of the urbanization and the westernization of the diets in Uganda, coupled with the lack of physical activity, the unhealthy diets are the leading risk factors for non-communicable diseases. Um, so having dietary guidelines can articulate key messages to assist the population to maintain a healthy diet, and there's a need to promote good nutrition enshrined in the different documentations and policies of Uganda. So our food-based guidelines can be used by the policymakers, program designers, and different players to 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 address issues to do with malnutrition and the unhealthy diets. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, the rationale for the guidelines. One is unhealthy diets are one of the four risk factors for non-communicable diseases, and these diseases compromise the health and add a financial burden to the well-being of human beings. The Uganda Non-Communicable Diseases Alliance strategic plan for the prevention and control of these diseases uh, highlights promoting healthy diets as a key priority of action for reducing the risk of NCDs. So we have the guidelines, and they aim to fulfill this action. Next slide. The objectives, one is to provide data recommendations across the life cycle of optimal growth. The second objective is to prevent diet-related diseases and to promote desirable food consumption patterns. Basically, there are three objectives for the Ugandan food-based guidelines. Next, this is the process that the guidelines went through. We did a literature review, whereby we did desk review and gathered information about food-based guidelines across Africa and in Uganda. And then the drafting of the document by consultants was done. Then there was a technical consultation and stakeholder consultations. This went on for about a year. And then we had a write shop where we compiled the guidelines. And now the draft has been reviewed and approved by government. Next. The key recommendations One is to eat. The guidelines recommend that there's need to eat some grains as starchy staples, such as sources of carbohydrates. They recommend consumption of grains and tubers, cereals and different cereals, whole cereals. And then they mention of eating a variety of the starchy foods. Then the second guideline is to eat legumes and nuts in your diet, and they are good for the source of the plant proteins as well. Then the third guideline is to eat lean meat, fish, poultry, insects, eggs, and at least twice a week. And they recommend at least eat meat twice a week. The fourth guideline that was provided for children and adolescents should consume whole milk. Adults should consume skimmed milk, and then they always boil milk before drinking because of the safety issues and the hygiene, the poor hygiene and the poor handling of the milk product. They recommend boil milk before consumption. Number 5 is to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables every day, and these fruits and vegetables are best eaten raw or lightly cooked. The vegetables in particular should be fried in a small amount of cooking oil to make the vitamins and other micronutrients available. Next slide. The sixth guideline is they recommend to at least 8 glasses of at least of safe drinking water per day. Then limit consumption of added fats and oils. Then they limit salt intake to less than 5 grams of iodized salt. Then the number 9 is limit the consumption of added sugar. Limit the consumption of honey to 4 tablespoons, and limit intake of sugary snacks. And the 10th guideline is if condiments have been added salt, they should be used in small amounts. And lastly, among the 10th guidelines is to read food labels on condiments and spices carefully, paying attention to sugar, salt, and trans fat, total saturated fat content. Next. Yes, the Ugandan guidelines also provide for recommended amounts for consumption of the food, the different food items to be consumed. And there are several types of foods that have been recommended. I mean, the amounts have been recommended for starchy staples, pulses, legumes, meat and flesh foods, vegetables. I don't want to go into those details. They are listed there, and the slides are available to anyone. But the most important thing is to notice that recommended amounts are categorized by age group: 2 to 5 years, 6 to 8 years, and 19 to 60 years old. Thank you so much. Those are the few few slides I've shared with you. If there's any question, I'm ready to answer. Thank you.